Hello folks, R1 here. Gaijin recently ran an event in War Thunder featuring large caliber guns on aircraft. And I thought, great, that's kind of been an interest of mine lately, and I went into it with a variety of aircraft. It's set up as a duel event where you start at very close range, and frankly it was, well, I'm sure it was fun for the pilots that like to fly yaks with oversized guns, yak fighters, and P-63 era Cobras, but the event was dominated by those aircraft. While I had some modest success with some of the twin-engine Japanese aircraft sporting large cannons because of their rather extreme maneuverability for an aircraft of that type, even then my successes were only modest at best. And German aircraft with large caliber cannons were almost exclusively designed for ground attack roles, and in the close, fast-paced melees that ensued in the large caliber event, they were completely useless. I got a few kills here and there, but by and large it was more of a detriment to my team than anything else. So I decided I was going to explore some of the uses of the large caliber guns for the ground attack craft. Now, in realistic battles, they can, in ground forces combat, they can score the occasional kill. They're at a disadvantage there. Their flight models make it very difficult for them to stay in the air at low altitude and bring their gun to bear effectively. It is not impossible, as in this example, where I've done some damage to NPC tanks, but I finally score a direct hit on a player tank and take him out. So it can be done. Unfortunately, you've got the difficulty of having to deal with the flight models in realistic mode not favoring these aircraft at low altitude, and, well, as you can see, they struggle. Now, don't get me wrong. These aircraft are not completely useless in the air. Depending on the situation. If a fighter gets behind them, most of them are, well, they're dead. But if they can engage a bomber or ground attack aircraft, they do stand a chance of actually being effective. The fact that some of them are actually fairly agile if they can keep up some airspeed, and if they can avoid going down on the deck like they normally have to go after ground targets, their maneuverability is enough to capitalize on the fact that they have a very large caliber gun and can take down other large aircraft pretty well. Unfortunately, the odds of being left unmolested by fighter aircraft or accurate ground anti-aircraft fire, well, it's pretty slim. And your lifespan is, shall we say, rather limited. Especially in situations like this, if you don't have a rear gunner to at least offer some sort of rear defense. I suspect that these aircraft will come into their own when an arcade mode for ground forces combat comes into play. But until then, right now, they are most effective in arcade mode on ground strike missions. The more forgiving flight model there, the ability to regain altitude and speed a bit easier, makes all the difference in the world for these aircraft. And they can hold their own even if engaged by enemy fighters. Some of them are remarkably agile in arcade mode, even if they don't have a very high top speed, and can keep up with the best of the smaller fighters as long as they can handle them one at a time. It's when they get overwhelmed in a massive furball that they really can't defend themselves very well at all. They're too fragile, and their guns just don't come on target and stay on target as quickly as a standard fighter will. So we're going to take a look at a ground strike mission in Western Europe. In arcade mode, I needed to get some experience in these aircraft to bring some of them up from, well, no upgrades at all, I mixed in a few large caliber aircraft that I had managed to grind up and fully outfit, like these Stukas. And as a concession, I threw in a Hinkles 111. I needed to upgrade that a little bit more. And one of the ME 410s that could do ground strike but also was effective in the air, just to mix things up a little bit. I think you'll be kind of impressed. Using large caliber guns from the air on ground targets can be satisfying, strangely enough. And I thought this match was a good example of what these aircraft are capable of in an arcade ground strike mission. Now, I almost make the mistake at the beginning of this match of doing what this type of aircraft should never do, taking the lead. I found myself out ahead of the rest of my team somehow, and I was flying right into the teeth of the enemy fighters. I would have been surrounded and destroyed in moments, so I peel back a little bit to let the more agile fighter aircraft engage and start to do their thing, which would give me an opportunity to come in and do my thing. I had made up my mind before this battle even started that I was not going to be going after any enemy bases with the Hinkles. I was not going to engage in that type of combat at all. I was strictly going to go after ground targets. And it turned out pretty well. These craft take a little time to get to the actual battle, but once they do, they can start working their magic. Of course, enemy fighters zero in on you fairly quickly if they're not engaged by your own team, and who can blame them? They know that every time you take out one of those tanks, that ticket counter inches down, and they consider you a fairly easy target, but, well, you're not quite as easy a target in this mode as one might think. The Stukas in particular are surprisingly agile, and if there's any serious threats from your team around, the fighters just often don't have the time to take you out because you're twisting and turning too rapidly for them to get a quick, easy kill on. Of course, when I'm flying, sometimes I'm my own worst enemy. Get a little too aggressive going for those stubborn ground kills. Let's do that again. Now, it takes a while to reload these guns, so I decide since it takes me a little bit of time to actually get to my ground targets, I'm going to try some long-distance sniping. I've had some success with that in the past, but that P-38 is a reasonably agile target. He's a little bigger than most. I thought I might have a chance of taking him out on the way in, but now he's just too far out. 2.5 kilometers is a bit much. Still, I had plenty of time to reload before I actually got to the ground targets, so why not? Our efforts on the ground have already started to yield dividends. We are slowly pulling ahead of the enemy team. And I don't feel too bad about that. I always feel a little cheesy when I'm in a high-altitude bomber just taking out bases. But here, I'm mixing it up right with the fighters. I'm taking the same risks everybody else is. I'm being an integral and active part of the combat taking place. And I don't have any regrets about that at all. I'm a fairly available target. You don't have to climb to high altitude to come up after me. You don't have to divorce yourself from the rest of the fight. I'm down there in the nitty-gritty center of action, and I think that's okay. If ground attack was more like this, as far as the other bombers were concerned, I think everyone would be a lot happier. I've always been of the opinion that bombers should start at a little lower altitude, or that all fighters and bombers should start at the same high altitude. I mean, let's face it, in actual missions, the fighters were at the same altitude the bombers were, or even higher most of the time. So it doesn't make much sense that in War Thunder they start out at rather low altitude, or in some types of gameplay even on the deck, while the bombers have a significant altitude advantage. I've always felt that if that were the case, then the fighters could make intelligent decisions about whether to defend their own bombers, engage the enemy bombers, or simply go after fighters to make your team's life easier in that regard. To me, that would make gameplay, even on ground strike missions, much more entertaining, not only for the fighter pilots, but for the bomber pilots as well. Well, it'll probably never happen. Gaijin has their own theories on how these particular types of combat should be run, but I have hope. They do experiment from time to time. I guess we'll see. Alright, I'm going to jump in the duck here. We're maintaining a slight lead. I like to think I have something to do with that. Maybe not, but hey, it's my video, so I'll entertain my own fantasies. Thank you very much. Keep one eye on the ticket counter as the mighty duck gets to work. Yeah, he got me. Didn't quite get him taken out in time. Still, that's alright. It was a good run. Time to jump in the other duck. It's got a smaller main gun, 37mm I believe, but it's still effective in this type of situation. As it turns out, however, it's unnecessary. We've won this match quite handily. And I've been pretty pleased with the big gun German ground attack aircraft. I always worry when I make a video like this that people will find ground attack against NPC targets boring. If that's the case, let me know and I'll try to avoid doing them in the future. But to me, sometimes I find the tactics involved in taking out the NPC targets and surviving the enemy team while you're doing so kind of interesting in its own right. I hope you don't mind. But if you do, let me know. If you'd like to see more of this, let me know that too. Well, that's going to conclude our look at large caliber German ground attack aircraft and arcade ground strike missions. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Until I see you again, good hunting.